when I thought about Possible, hey, we already have so many events. Why do you think about a new event? I think, yes, you're right. We have many events, but not the right ones.
All those leadership roles across AOL, Yahoo, FIFA, building up to Mexico, and you're living in New Zealand. Hello, welcome to MobileGroove. Yes, I speak with the bold minds, the bright minds shaping the future of marketing, technology, digital growth, and this time the intersection of all of that, because today's guest has not just worked in that industry, continues to work in that industry, but he's bringing together decision makers from across marketing, media, technology, all of these areas to explore what's next. So we want to explore with him. Christian, you are global president and co-founder of Possible, which is the event I'm looking forward to. It's just about a month away, one of the fastest growing events, and you yourself, one of the magnets in the industry, a connector. So first of all, great to have you, Christian.
Thank you so much, Peggy.
So we're all excited about Possible. We'll tell the audience why, because if you're not headed there, then FOMO, for one thing, and do it next year. But before we get to Possible, I want to look at you because we know you, I know you, the industry knows you as also being the co-founder of Demexco, which also became a very influential platform event, but not really quite a platform. And here you are, all those leadership roles across AOL, Yahoo, FIFA, building up Demexco. And you're living in New Zealand and you're joining me in your morning and you've been there for nearly 2 decades. So, your distance from the hubs, I'm thinking New York, London, Berlin, Miami, where Possible will be. Does that give you a different perspective on the industry? Does it remove you a little bit from the noise? What does that do for you being in New Zealand?
Thank you, Peggy. And you summarized it quite well. And I've made the decision, roughly 20 years ago. That was a time when I've left Yahoo. I worked for AOL and Yahoo, as you said, for many years. I felt that was the right move. It was just for private reasons, for lifestyle reasons. And that was the time when I then started on Demexco, which we launched together with my business partner at this time in 2008. So moving to the other side of the world and then launching a business back in Europe, which was looks a bit weird. But I've told everybody, this is the way I would like to do it because distance creates also clarity for me. Being at home in my home base with my family, of course, working from here, that created the exact right distance, which gives you, as I said before, a lot of clarity. And then you see things developing maybe a bit, not necessarily earlier than others, but with a bit more clarity that, for example, over this time, marketing became less about channels. It was more about ecosystems. Communities became more powerful than the media itself. These were the things which I realized then very much with that distance or being in this environment and changed environment from time to time. So yes, I really appreciated this opportunity. Also, if it was a decision for lifestyle reasons, at the first time. And then with COVID and all these things, I was used to this, right? I was used to work with remote teams from the distance, being with them, being with my clients, with my network from time to time, but not 7 days a week. It wasn't planned exactly like this, but things came together very well. And I took the advantages out of this.
Well, they do work together really well if you think about it, because then the events, the connections, the meetings, they become very intentional. These are the kinds of conversations that you want to have when people finally come together. Curious, does you see any trends or patterns? Because I see that as well a bit because I'm from the States. I live in Germany. Here I am, lifestyle decision. And you do see things with a different perspective. You're not so caught up in it. I'm just curious because your event, as well as yourself, so central in the industry. Anything you're noticing differently looking from this vantage point?
And we all discussed this during the pandemic, but this was, again, as I said before, not brand new for me, that human connections would become or are still the most valuable assets. It sounds so simple because we grew up with that. I mean, at least those ones who are not Gen Z, because of this increased complexity in our today's also business world, of course. There's a lot of noise. I think everybody, especially senior executives in our industry, across our industries, appreciates that if there is a a level of clarity which provides such an event and such an environment and within your network, this helps people to focus on the right things. And I believe that this only comes along with human connections, at least from time to time. People are more selective where to use their time. We have too many events at the end. And people told me when I thought about possible, hey, we already have so many events. Why do you think about a new event? I think, yes, you're right. We have many events, but not the right ones, to be honest.
That's just the point you just made
Yeah.
there. They are events. You're not an event.
It's well, that was never my intention. Just another event, right? And it starts with what you believe in, what is the right format to connect people in the right way. Let's start with that. It was obvious for me that we don't just need another conference. It has to be more than that because conferences means you have great content on stages, you have some networking opportunities. That's it. So this is what we have en masse in our industry. What about business opportunities? What about long lasting relationships? What about long lasting inspiration coming out of something which goes beyond a conference solely? And this is why Possible, I think, is so successful. It goes beyond that. It has an activation space. It happens indoor, outdoor. It was created in a special environment, Miami Beach. It's not a trade show. It's not a windowless conference center, where you're stuck for 2 days. This all comes together, so many details, which is one of the reasons why.
I mean, you make that point, and you've said that also in other interviews. This is not about being an event. This is a platform that is going to create ongoing value for the industry. And you're right, great place to have it. Very interesting format, but maybe unpack that for some people in our audience who haven't yet attended Possible, and how you turn those connections or make certain that those connections, if possible, are turning into outcomes, not just conversations, but they are real business outcomes, you said yourself.
It is absolutely not about growth solely. So I've never thought about how can I make Possible the biggest event in the world. Honestly, that was the time of the Mexico. Because it was a brand new industry for us. At this time, there were no trade fair shows for the digital industry. And we brought together a couple of 10,000 people, similar to other big events in Germany, in Europe, and around the world. I don't think that this is a currency anymore, especially if you launch a new event. So my approach was to become the most relevant, the most inspiring event for the industry. And this is not about size. This is, yes, we have to bring in the most relevant people, the decision makers. So you need numbers, but it's not the growth per se. That happens organically. That happens automatically if you bring the right people into the room. And this was all about, thinking about Possible. I often compare it with an event which is outside of our industry, Davos, the World Economy Forum, which has, of course, a different agenda. But is it the biggest event in the world? No, it's not. But it brings together the most influential people from different areas. And this is what I had in mind when I thought about Possible. It should become a very meaningful, relevant, big event, but not just driving numbers. It has to grow by intention in terms of people wants to be there, and not because you believe you have to spend your budget, your time because of others. You need to be there. You want to be there because you take something out of this, which is not the case with some of the others where you normally spend time. I think I've seen every industry event around the world over the last couple of years, and I asked myself, do I enjoy it, to go there? What was my motivation? What was the takeaway? And quite often I had to say, well, it was some networking, but it was unstructured. It was inefficient networking. Ending up in a big event with tens of thousands of people, it leaves it everything. It's my own responsibility to dig in and find my way through. And this is what I try to do differently with Possible. We curate our audience in so many different ways. It's not just the content which is curated, heavily curated. It's the variety of different formats, also into very intimate formats. It's the meeting approach that we are setting up a couple of thousand meetings between, in this case, brand marketers and solution providers and vendors to connect them on purpose, and not just let things happen randomly, right? If you run to each other. This is a very much curated approach overall. It's like your own network. People appreciate if you connect somebody on purpose, A and B, and because they trust you, and they rely on your introduction. This is the best thing what can happen, and this is on a broader scale what happens at Possible.
I want to get into that for a moment because I attended. I'll be there again, and I attended as press. I have a podcast studio. I'm thrilled with the access. I wasn't thinking about the networking because obviously I'm not a brand and I'm not a solutions provider, but there are in our audience. So how does that work? Is it something a little bit like a little bit of a matchmaking service? I say I'm open to meeting these people, and then your team will find them for me. I wasn't aware of that. How's that work?
Yeah, so it's a combination. We encourage our partners, the exhibitors and partners who are doing activations. Of course, you should create your own space. You should invite people. You should set up your own meetings. This is the base for everything. If you come as an attendee and don't have your own space, then of course you want to be, you should be aware of who's there on site to make some plans. But then it comes to the different formats, as I said before, intimate formats, for example, in the VIP Academy or the Rising Talent Academy, where we have 20, 25 people in the same room, talking about a topic, and therefore get in touch with a limited number of others in the same room, which creates another relationship than just being with hundreds or listening to keynotes, one-to-many conversations. This all makes sense to get very different inspirations. But when it comes to create contacts and relationships, then we offer a call it matchmaking service. We have a double opt-in connecting platform where people reach out to each other, and agree on a meeting. You know exactly who you're going to meet, what company, who the person is, and what the topic is. And this happens on purpose. And then we are organizing more than 3,000 meetings on site this year at Possible,
Wow.
between
Okay.
attendees. And quite often, I mean, not every single meeting turns into a relationship or a business opportunity, but also if just a handful or one or two comes out of this, then it's worth doing this. And you only need one of these selected moments, long-lasting moments, to remember Possible as the most valuable platform. It's that approach, to inspire through content, to connect people, very selective, extremely curated, and this makes a difference, obviously.
Well, I'm going to check that out actually now and speak to some people who were brought together in that way. What I do love about your event, your platform, and the vibe there, it reminds me of reading books about Venice in the days of Medici, right? This is where disciplines and ideas intersect. I mean, it was fantastic last year when I attended to hear people talking about brands and games and commerce and that intersection. So, Possible is curating content, but also relationships at that intersection, marketing, technology, culture. Why do you think that intersection matters so much right now? And what do you want to see happening at that intersection? The conversations that you
Yeah,
think should be
yeah.
happening that maybe just aren't happening enough, and maybe like Medici, you're going to inspire them.
First of all, it was obvious. We talk a lot of technology in our industry, which influence media, advertising, marketing. This is a given. The culture aspect it's a very broad topic. It allows a lot of interpretation, and I thought about this, in a much deeper sense. A lot of marketers talk about culture as something you can, or not just marketers, executives, let's say, you can tap into. But culture isn't a moment or just a trend. It's a system for me. It's built over time, and it's driven by communities. Um, and this is another layer above the technology trends and the marketing core business itself. So the real question is for me, how do we show up in culture? And I believe it should be the question for everybody in our industry. So do we actually understand the communities shaping up? So the culture aspect is an interesting add-on which provides a lot of creativity, a lot of also different players in the room, but who belongs to the marketing world. It would be too short thinking or too obvious, let's say, just to talk about AI all the time and the influence on marketing, which happens, of course, across all the events these days, and it for good reasons because it's a massive change. Um, but the culture aspect provides interesting additional topics, and therefore we have, if you look into our programming, for example, and our audience, the profile of our audience, you have marketeers, you have tech companies, ad tech, martech companies, tech companies in general. You have creator economy creators. You have agencies from the creator side, but also from the agency side, are coming more and more. So they obviously understand that cultural level we have in addition to marketing and technology. Of course, it takes a bit of time to convince people that this is a different, slightly different approach than as I said before, most of the other events. So we were always looking for differentiation to other events so that it becomes a meaningful, relevant addition in the event calendar for everybody.
It also tells us something about, if there are in the audience people thinking about putting together events, at a much smaller scale. We'll get to your numbers in a moment. They're off the charts, but, it is saying something about where is there an opportunity for an event anymore in such a crowded market. And I think what you're saying here is that don't think about an event, think about a community, think about conversation, think about curation, and even if you have a small event, you will still have a place.
It's correct. Also, if as I said before, or tried to say, is you cannot think just in numbers. I think this is not the right approach, whether for events or in general. Yes, you're running a business. I mean, let's face it, we are running a business, and it has to be profitable and all these things. And I also understand that some kind of FOMO excitement uh, will be created with if you have not just the right people, but also a dedicated number of people in the room. So this is all correct. But do we need to end up, having 20, 30, 40,000 people in Miami in a couple of years' time? I don't think so, honestly. It's only that people will come and will leave and say, that was the best time I spent. I'm not focusing on budgets in the very first step. I'm focusing on, are people willing to spend their time, which is the most valuable asset? And if this is the case, then they will come back and then it will last. And this becomes a platform and not just an event. An event is happening over 2, 3, 4 days. And then it's done. And then you have the next event. I don't see that as a huge benefit, to be honest. But if you think about this, hey, you speak about this weeks after, you share your experience with others. You are always looking forward to be back soon. If there is a need over the time to create a communication and a network around the year with several moments to reconnect, then it becomes a meaningful platform. And this is definitely more than an event. I think that needs to be approached. But again, I'm saying at least if you're launching something new, if you're an existing event, a traditional event which exists for decades, of course you have your legacy. There is a reason why you exist for decades. Um, but when you enter the space as a newcomer with a new approach, then it has to be different. And that was the moment for possible.
I mean, we talked about growth. I really respect that you weren't thinking about that because then you lay a basis that allows growth. It's almost like you're going to power your own flywheel. But what can you tell us about that? Because you've built up great momentum across the industry. First of all, congratulations. I heard you doubled. I don't know from the numbers. So maybe for those who haven't experienced Possible yet, what are the numbers you can share about that trajectory? And when did it actually all start? It's been maybe 4 years ish.
It started, well, the first event was launched in 23, which is now 3 years ago. So it means
Okay.
we are looking into our
Time is
fourth.
one.
Exactly. But it started a bit more than a year prior, which means in the middle of, well, or it came to the end of the pandemic,
Okay.
which was, as you can imagine, a very exciting time in many ways, especially doing this from outside of the US, creating the team, creating your network of supporters and investors and all these things. We started in 23 with the first event with, I think, around 2,500 people, which was exactly where we landed. Last year, after 3 years, we had 5,400 people on site. So that was a big step forward. But I always felt, as I said before, it was a kind of organic growth. This year, it it's still hard to say because we're still 6 weeks out, and in general, everybody makes relatively late decisions to join events or book your travels, etc., which is absolutely normal. It has nothing to do with us specifically. I do the same when I'm going to other events. I decide very, very late. So I think we're looking for 6,000 plus attendees this year. Who knows where we will land finally? We have more than 350 speakers on various stages, but again, various different stages. The big stages for the big keynotes, and then very intimate peer-to-peer conversations as well, which we set up. Something which is very important: 33% of our audience are represented by brand marketeers, which is, I think, a very impressive number. And of course, everybody appreciates this to have so many brand marketers on site. The profile of audience includes everybody who belongs to the marketing world, advertising media world. So agencies, tech companies, creator economy, etc. The startup ecosystem is well represented in our innovation village. And because of this growth, we had to decide to extend our footprint. So we are going next door into the Eden Rock and Novo Hotel, in addition to the Fontainebleau resort where we started 3 years ago. So this is an exciting year for us, with also a very visible kind of expansion. If you come back this year, you will see that immediately. We also will launch new formats because of the need and the requirements of the industry. We will create a new CMO experience, specifically for senior brand marketers. We have a dedicated AI universe space where, AI is everywhere, and a lot of people will talk about this on stages and off stages. But we thought about having a dedicated area with companies presenting their solutions and their ideas around AI could make sense. This will be launched, and a few other things. So there are always new stuff, but not for the sake of launching something new every year. It's just following the requirements, and this is what I've told myself since the beginning, since I've invented Mexico in 2007, 2008, and I've told my team from the beginning on, nothing is set in stone. What worked well last year doesn't mean anything for next year because our world is changing so dramatically. Expectations are changing so dramatically. And this is why we review every single piece every year again and again. And that's one of the reasons why, and that we need to fulfill even higher expectations from year to year.
I'm thinking the whole time, I'm thinking, first of all, that's grit, right? Because you launched Possible at a moment when we were recovering from the pandemic. And I've seen in other interviews that you were talking about how times of disruption, you know, glass is half empty or it's half full. You see them as the best moments to build something new. What is it that gives you that conviction? Is that just your instincts as a founder? Is it your understanding of events? Because it is something to build an event that is really a platform. That is not an easy task. And that's exactly what you've done.
Yeah. I think it's a lot instinct. I'm an entrepreneur, and you can have a lot of data, and of course you should do your research. And I've talked to, at the end, hundreds of people in my network in the industry before making the decision. But at some stage, you just have to make a decision in whether in your private life or in your business life. Possible and stay positive was obviously the motivation also to think about the name. Possible expressed so many positive um, moments, opportunities, um, which is our theme every year. Possible is the theme. Let's make things possible. Let's make the impossible possible.
You said your instinct, you're listening or seeing what resonates. I'm just curious, is there like a wow moment or feedback from attendees, speakers that was just like extremely meaningful and told you, yes, this is it. This is the moment that I know where I'm going and what is possible with possible.
After the first event, when a few people came back to me and said, I wasn't just participating in an event, I was becoming part of this. That was a moment for me where I said, this that makes a difference. I've never thought about myself visiting other events, looking into this like this. And then I thought, okay, let's create these moments for everybody, just on a slightly bigger scale, because that's exactly what doesn't exist. We had and we still have a lot of boutique events with 100, 200 people, where it's a complete different approach. And I see the huge benefits coming out of these intimate gatherings. And on the other hand, tens of thousands going to Vegas every year and to Cannes and this, which makes sense. It's a different approach. But what about that in the middle? Combining both the intimacy and the benefits on this larger scale, but limited, very curated. And when people told me that, that was for me the moment where I said, we are on the right track.
Well, you're on track, and some people have said this, they've described possible as a movement, right? A movement within the marketing industry. What do you feel when you hear that? Is that something that you have set out to do?
Which excites me most is that I can feel now the shift, that after 3 years with a massive growth and development, from the beginning on, possible is no longer just something we are building. I would say it's something the industry is starting to create with us, to co-create with us. Um, they're not just booking a space. They're not just asking for a stage presence. They're heavily involved. Our commercial partners, exhibitors, and who do all the activations, and then with the speakers, with our audiences, with partners who wants to add value to possible, doing their own events in addition to our official events. That's something we could co-create for the entire industry. That was somehow in my mind, but I also have to be honest, nobody can completely foresee the future or if it all plays out well. And the best proof for me that this is working, if partners are investing, and I'm not talking about money, investing their ideas with us and into our possible event, I think this is the best thing what can happen. And developing formats and stories together with the partners and your network. This is, I haven't seen it before at other events. When I'm joining events, that never happened before to me. And
I'm thinking the whole time about all the events, and I go to, 20-ish a year. It's what I have to do. And every one of them is like, you're here. And these are the bad side events, we won't even give you a list of them. You figure it out. And making it very difficult to experience the event because they're seeing it in a very closed way. And I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, I wish more events would think about that, would say, yes, let's open up to the ideas of, your partners, your sponsors, but it's not just their money, it's their ideas. It's just like in technology, the platform play always wins. An operating system. What's wrong with that? Let other people develop on it. I have the system. And that's in a way what you've done, Christian. I really have to say that just dawned on me that you are very much about co-creation. And that's why I think you're making the valuable connections that you are, because everyone's in on it. Everyone's part of it. Everyone can have skin in the game if they want. You're not saying we stop, these are our venues. Don't think about anything else. That's
Yeah,
brave.
let's
Brave.
don't tell anybody, right? Let's keep it as our secret here, so that nobody can copy this.
Well, I
No,
think
I
you
mean,
have to have guts to copy it, Christian, because most people will look at the numbers and you're
yeah,
looking at the
yeah,
impact.
yeah. There's no obligation for whoever comes to Miami every year and be with us. There's no obligation, but at least we want to offer this option, and more using these options, co-creating something, being heavily involved and investing again, not just with money, but with your time and your creativity and your thoughts. And unfortunately, I have to say, we are limited, right? I would love to have, more people in my team. I would love to have more time than just 7 days a week and 24 hours a day to follow up on all these great ideas. So unfortunately, at some stage, you have to decline. You have to say, okay, let's focus on next year already. But we're doing whatever we can to make everything possible every year, so that you see, and also when you come back this year, hopefully you will tell me afterwards, you've seen the next step, that we did the next step. You've seen the next level of that event, and an even better outcome for you as well. So this is my hope for everybody coming back end of April.
Building something like Possible takes enormous energy, enormous grit to do it in the year that you started. Question for you that will help our audience as well. Your motto, what personally motivates you all these years? Maybe something you can share so we can also get some of that energy you have as well, Kristen.
You may, or your audience might have heard it before, but think out of the box. Don't copy things, because you will never as good as the original. Create your own original, whatever this is, whatever business you're working in, and this is my approach from the beginning on. Sometimes you fail; it's not working every time, but then it's important to use another door and close this one and go to another door. But yeah, think out of the box. It's too much copy and paste out there in our world. I have to say, in today's time specifically, it's my impression. You still win. You still win if you create something original.
Well, you said it yourself, something doesn't happen, that door shuts, another one opens. We have to shut the chapter here at this point because I know you have to go. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time today, Christian, to be on Mobile Groove. And yes, absolutely, I'm looking forward to Possible and looking forward to having you back maybe afterwards as well, just to talk about, yes, what's in store for us next year. I'm sure that will be well worth it. But again, thank you, Christian, for your time.
Thank you, Peggy. It was a pleasure.